Hey, how we doing, everybody? Happy Tuesday. I know that most of you that just opened your YouTube or your Twitch, or if you're seeing us on Twitter, you're expecting breakdown of the N'Keal Harry trade to the Bears and how he's going to replace Allen Robinson. But we're going to save that for another time. And we're going to talk baseball because there's a big slate. There was already a game in baseball today. The White Sox and, almost said it, Guardians had the first game of their doubleheader today. Shane Bieber got the win. He pitched very well. So if you were on the Guardians first five or the full game, good on you. The Guardians handled their business. Game 2 of the doubleheader is tonight, and there are 14 other games going on in baseball tonight. We've got Gary and Thorne, one of our top contributors over at the DraftKings Playbook, covering baseball. He's with us, and Matt Meiselman, DraftKings content specialist, but he's more of a, is it fair to say, Meiselman, that you're more of a sportsbook guy than you are a DFS guy? That's fair, right?
Yeah, maybe like 80-20 in that direction, but also you can just keep saying content specialist because I think those are your two favorite words in the English language at this point. I think you just really enjoy saying it, so I'll just let you keep
really
doing
milked it. He did.
I say it all the time to Shirag, and Shirag gets all bothered because he's a manager.
He's a content manager, yeah.
But maybe we just leave it at content specialist during the NBA season, and we can just start calling you stolen base analyst, Matt Meiselman, because in our fancy schmancy Slack channel getting set for the show today, Meiselman has his stolen base breakdowns. It's fascinating. So he is ready to go for this slate tonight.
Noah Syndergaard is pitching, so we will get there.
A lot of really like Syndergaard's pitching. Dallas Keuchel up from the minors. He's pitching tonight on the final game of the slate, Arizona and in San Francisco. Chris Sale, speaking of left-handed pitchers that are Chris Sale.
I don't think Chris Sale's reached Dallas Keuchel territory.
Not quite.
You just named 3 pitchers, though, where I'm taking their teams to win. So I know you don't like any of those guys, as just evidenced by the way you said them, but I definitely want to talk about all of those players for different reasons.
Yeah, but we're fair on this show. But yeah, I mean, hopefully, T's and P's to all the TVs down at Tropicana Field. Keep those safe from Chris Sale tonight in Tampa. Okay, enough of that. We're going to talk baseball for the next 50 minutes or so. So please, 40 minutes. Weigh in with your questions, your comments, concerns in either chat. Please, we'll take them, and these guys will be willing to take them. Let's start with Garion. He has a write-up on the DraftKings Playbook. Gary, and what comes to mind from a DFS standpoint when you're looking at pitching? We'll move to hitting after, but from a pitching standpoint, what's the appropriate way to build a lineup tonight?
Yeah, I think, you were kind of taking a negative approach to the pitching on tonight's slate, where I think I'm actually a little bit more optimistic, I guess, or just sort of in awe of at least the top 5 pitchers we have on this slate. I would actually say maybe the best top 5 I've seen on a slate since like those early April slates where you just had like the same opening day guys going every 5 days. But like Garrett Cole, Spencer Strider, Dylan Cease, Logan Webb is a really, really talented and very, very upside laden top 5. And then you've got Luis Garcia, who I actually think is in a fascinating spot tonight against the Angels and Noah Syndergaard, just because Garcia burned so many people his last start when he was the chalkiest of all chalk on a slate that did not have nearly this level of high-end pitching options. So I think people are just going to not want any part of Luis Garcia. And while I actually don't have a ton of faith in the Astros tonight, and I think Matt would agree, considering what he said earlier, I do think just from an ownership perspective, and because Luis Garcia is someone who's, averaged about a 30% strikeout rate across his last 10 starts, going up against an Angels team that has been absolutely pitiful offensively so far in the month of July, I just think it is a little fascinating. I don't think anyone's going to want a piece of him. So in tournaments, you could maybe do worse than Luis Garcia.
Okay. No, it's true. I mean, I did not mention pitchers that are at the top of the salary list. I named off a bunch of, a couple of guys. But Meiselman, it's a way to get you involved here. We can even go to the sports book, but you're on the teams of the pitchers we already named off. Syndergaard, Keuchel, Sale. Sale makes the season debut. As I mentioned, Keuchel's coming up from the minors, and Syndergaard, it's name recognition at this point. But you actually like Syndergaard tonight.
Yeah, Syndergaard's been quite good his last two starts. So I like him for DFS. I like the Angels to win tonight. I also like Astros stolen base props because even when Syndergaard is good,
That's right.
everyone can run on him. And Lamarca and I did a show last week where we were talking about a few different Marlins players to steal a base. We got all of our picks wrong, but Jesus Aguilar stole his first career base in that game. There were no odds for him. He probably would have been like 1,000,000 to 1. I mean, he's been in the league for a few years now. He's maybe the slowest runner that isn't Albert Pujols, and he actually stole a base off Syndergaard. So
what you're saying is we have to write into the sportsbook right now and ask for a Martin Maldonado prop.
Yeah, right. Like that could happen. I could see it. If there's a 3-2 pitch and he might be running, you get a strikeout, like anyone could steal a base. I actually don't even think that's what happened with Aguilar. I think he took off on an 0-2 pitch. Yeah, and it was just he just saw that the guy can't get the ball to the plate in time. But anyway, well, this actually may help stolen base props. The reason I like Syndergaard is he's throwing his slider a lot more the last two starts, and it's been a pretty good pitch for him. So he's got 15 Ks the last two times out. I don't think Syndergaard is good. I think he's like kind of average, but the real key to this game from a money line perspective and also from a DFS perspective for Syndergaard is that Yordan Alvarez is on the IL. And the Astros offense without Alvarez is pretty mediocre, I think. Like Altuve's good, Bregman's good. Kyle Tucker, I think, is actually kind of underrated. I think Jeremy Pena would be rookie of the year most years. Julio Rodriguez has been unbelievable, but Pena's good too. But the Astros lineup falls off a cliff at the back end under normal circumstances, and now you're taking their best hitter out of the lineup in Alvarez. So I like Syndergaard. I like the Angels to win. I like Syndergaard for DFS. And then, yeah, the steals props.
Here they are.
We will see what the Astros lineup looks like. I actually don't think we have it yet. So some of these guys may not be playing. Pena actually has gotten a couple of days off recently. Guys like Chas McCormick and Jake Myers. I don't know if Myers is listed. Okay. Well, like we don't know if they're going to be playing, but I think the numbers on those three guys in particular are very appealing, assuming they're in the lineup. And then I have to mention him because I always mention him. The stolen baseline on Shohei Ohtani, I think is bettable every single day that he plays. I just like it has made no sense to me this year that Ohtani is getting as long of odds as he's getting. Like I think he should be 5 or 6 to 1, if not lower than that in almost every matchup. Maybe you get like a lefty that can really hold runners and he's not going to have a stolen base chance. But Ohtani hit last week when we were talking about him. It was a game that Syndergaard started. That has nothing to do with it. I just think like Ohtani is not someone who should be 8, 9, or 10 to 1 for a steal. He's actually been running more lately. So like personally, I've been betting Ohtani to steal a base literally every single game. It's had mixed results, but I just think the odds are not high enough.
Okay, very good. And yes, you can get the Angels at plus money, but key hitter being out for Houston, that certainly changes things. How about Gary? And when we move to offense tonight, that's kind of a nice segue. So speaking of other bats that are out, these aren't injury. Well, it might be injury related because they're trying to manage these players, but Aaron Judge out for the Yankees, which I feel like the last 2 times they've done the show, Judge has been out of the lineup. And Rafael Devers returns for Boston. Those are 2 names.
And one more just to interject. Christian Yelich just got scratched like a second ago, so he's not.
That's important.
There you go. So from an offensive standpoint, Gary, and where are we looking?
Yeah. Well, I said there were 5 really good pitchers at the top. It does sort of taper off a little bit after that. You do have some interesting guys in the 8K range, but I do think there are a lot of teams that should be in advantageous situations tonight. And I would say that sticking with that Milwaukee-Minnesota game, my favorite team to stack would be the Twins. I just think there's a lot of not only high end and like high upside bats in this lineup, obviously starting with Byron Buxton at 5'7", but you've also got a lot of guys who are pretty affordable in really nice platoon splits against Jason Alexander, who might just be the worst pitcher who's actively throwing right now. He's got a 5.70 expected ERA, but the big thing with Alexander is there is 0 swing and miss in his arsenal. He actually comes into this game in the bottom 1% of qualified pitchers in strikeout rate across all of baseball. His zone contact rate is up around 93%. So basically, if he throws a strike and someone decides to swing, very rarely is he generating a swing and miss, which is just bad news, generally speaking, especially with a team that has so much power like the Twins do. And a pitcher like Alexander, he somewhat negates the red flags that a Byron Buxton usually shows, because Buxton's someone who's got a above 500 expected WOBA on his batted ball events this season. When he's allowed to make contact, he is incredibly dangerous. He's one of the most dangerous hitters in all of baseball. So you've got Buxton and you've got Correa, obviously hitting from the right side of the plate. And then you've got just a bunch of left-handed bats at the top of this Twins order, including Alex Kirilloff, who's back from the minors, is hitting pretty well. He's hitting 6th tonight. He's just 3K. Alexander's had some real issues with left-handed bats so far this season. A WOBA above 400. They're hitting 394 off of him in a somewhat limited sample, but it's the sample we have in 2022. So I think whether it's Polanco, whether it's Max Kepler, whether it's Kirilloff, if you need to save a little bit more money, I just think there's a lot of different ways. Nick Gordon is even someone you can put into this stack. I just think there's a lot of different ways you can attack this Brewers pitching situation tonight. Although I should mention, we thought that Josh Hader was going to be unavailable this week because he's already taken his name out for the All-Star game. He's not actually on the bereavement list yet. He will be available for the Brewers tonight. So if you do worry about the back end of that bullpen a little bit, it's a very good bullpen. But if things go sideways early, I don't think we're getting into the Josh Haders of the world for the Milwaukee Brewers tonight.
Okay, Meiselman, you care to weigh in on that in terms of offenses you like?
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I like the Twins too, although I think there's 6 or 7 offenses that are quite similar. Basically, I'm looking to teams that I think would normally be very chalky, but the team we have to mention who's going to take away from all the ownership is the Padres. We don't actually have their lineup yet, but the Padres are dramatically underpriced at Coors Field. I think Manny Machado is actually their most expensive hitter at only
5,100.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it's Austin Gomber, who's not even one of their better pitchers. I think he is below average, even if he wasn't at Coors. Maybe he's close to average. He's fine, but Coors Field is a massive upgrade, as we all know. So because of that, I think just about any team that ordinarily we'd have to worry about ownership for, like the Twins, who are in a really good spot, just not a lot of people are going to play them. Dodgers against a Cardinals bullpen game, the Yankees at home. Well, Aaron Judge is out of the lineup, but still, I don't think people are playing the Yankees. I don't think that anyone really besides the Padres is going to be all that chalky. So I like the Twins, but I like the Phillies also. I like the Braves against Peterson. I think there's just a lot of really good choices for stacks. So I agree with Gary and the Twins are in a good spot. But honestly, I think this is a really hard slate to pick and choose some of these secondary offenses because there's just so many good ones. I will say though, the Padres probably will do well, but you can't play them in GPPs. It's just, there's so many other good choices and the ownership is just going to be so high. And we saw the Dodgers get shut out by Chad Kuhl. We actually saw them again almost get shut out by Jose Urania. Really good offenses in good spots can have bad games. Baseball is a high variance sport. So it's the one sport, basketball is not like this. Sometimes a player is just too cheap and you have to play him. That is almost never the case with hitters in baseball. Pitchers are a little different. But I think the guys that Gary mentioned at starting pitcher, like Cole and Strider and Cease, it's actually pretty easy to fit 2 of them with a Padres stack. And for that reason too, I think everyone's going to do that. So for me, I think playing cheaper pitchers, and we can get to some of these guys also, I think my preferred route is to pay down at pitcher and then pay up for offense because not a lot of people are doing that.
Okay, yeah, let's get into some value options.
Okay, so the pitchers I like are not especially good.
And look, we've already kind of hit on that.
Oh, we cut off.
No, go ahead. That was weird. You just
I don't know what happened to our audio. You were talking and then it froze and then I froze. Are we okay now?
Yes, please. We're going to talk some value now, which we already have done, but let's just kind of map it out.
Okay, so Chris Bubic and Glenn Otto
what do you got?
Are both Otto and Bubic are both kind of mediocre, but they're facing the Tigers and the A's, and these are just bad offenses. So because of the dynamics that I just laid out with really good aces in good spots and also the Padres, I think that's just where everyone's going to go. And on a different slate, Glenn Otto might be somewhat popular. Chris Bubic might be somewhat popular because these guys are sub 6K. They are really good values, but just because of the way the slate breaks down, I don't think a lot of people play them. So I like those 2 guys. And then I mentioned him before, Noah Syndergaard, 7,200. You might think the Astros are a tough matchup, but without Alvarez, it's really not that tough of a matchup. So Otto and Bubic and Syndergaard, I think those are the 3 guys I would go to for the kind of mid to low tier pitchers.
As far as value options, Gary, and you've got some guys, kind of what Meiselman was saying, you've got some guys from that Padres lineup in there, but what else you got for us?
Yeah, I mean, if we just want to stick with the value pitchers for a second, I would agree with what Matt was saying. I think there are some definite guys to go to. You know, we talk about it all the time. One of the first things I think anybody and probably everyone does when they open up one of these massive slates where you basically have every single team playing, identify who's playing the Tigers, identify who's playing the Athletics, and kind of work backwards from there, especially when it comes to finding some value at pitcher. So got no problem with Glenn Otto. Had a pretty good start against the Athletics back in April. Obviously, that's a small sample, whatever, but we have a big enough sample with the Athletics that they're just a terrible offensive team. I would say that some guys in maybe that 7K range that could go a little bit overlooked. Mitch White obviously has a high win expectancy pitching for the Dodgers. I think he's actually been very solid as a starting pitcher for them this season. The strikeout stuff is mediocre. You know, he's about a 20% strikeout rate guy, but the Cardinals offense has been struggling the past 3-4 weeks. I don't think they're exactly the same team they were, or the team that people thought they were back in like mid-May, early June. And even at that point in the season, the Cardinals have been much better against left-handed pitchers than they have been against right-handed pitchers for the entirety of 2022. Another guy that I like that is somewhat surprising, Jordan Lyles. He's actually had 4 really good starts. And by really good starts, I mean, he's worked into the 6th inning or past the 6th inning in 4 consecutive starts for the Orioles. He's got a 2.81 ERA across this span of time. Again, you're dealing with someone here who does not have elite strikeout stuff, but what you're hoping for is a situation where, you know, we've seen this a bunch with the Cubs this season, although they are hitting better since Suzuki came back. A lot of swing and miss in the Cubs lineup. They have the 4th highest strikeout rate in baseball across the last 2 weeks. So if you find yourself in a situation where Jordan Lyles can go 6 innings, maybe strike out 5 or 6 guys and get the win, the Orioles are red hot right now. I think he's a pretty good option to turn to at $7,300. If you're someone who I think, as Matt was sort of alluding to, who needs to avoid the Padres chalk on this particular slate. And, you know, maybe you get a little creative with the Padres, although I think most of the guys across the board are going to have pretty good ownership, but who knows, maybe like Grisham and Cronenworth go a little bit underowned because they're left on left. And you can get some situations where even Cronenworth's hit better against lefties for the entirety of this season anyway. But I think when you're looking for value, another place I think a lot of people will go, and I know we kind of briefly mentioned his name and Matt said that he liked him tonight, or at least like the team, but I think a lot of people are going to try to derive value out of the Giants. And the thing with that, it's just so obvious. And it almost smacks you in the face, especially considering just how many pieces they're missing and how that kind of brings some of these lower value bats into the top half of their lineup. You know, I'm not really against it. I don't think very highly of Dallas Keuchel at this point in his career, though he did have a decent start his last time out. But you know, Slater is going to be a really popular play at $3,000 because he's going to hit leadoff and he hits lefties really well. Darren Ruff has basically had a 160 WRC plus against left-handed pitchers since the beginning of May. And they're all just exceedingly cheap. I think Ruff probably going to hit cleanup tonight is going to be $2,800. So, you know, those are the 2 places I think a lot of people are going to go, which is why maybe you find some value with a lineup like the Twins, as we were talking about, with your Kirilovs, with your Gordons, et cetera, et cetera. But I think a lot of people are going to have exposure to those West Coast teams.
If you got baseball questions, please give them to us. We have the chat open on YouTube, also on Twitch. We're getting you set for a big night in Major League Baseball. Let's go to the betting board. Meiselman, again, it's a par 15 games on this. Reds are long underdogs at plus 255. Does Gary, and help me. What does Steve Buchanan do when Garrett Cole pitches? Who does he bring out to?
Oh God, some 90s
something.
Name I can't remember. I don't think he does that anymore though. That was just a we needed Robbie Ray to win the
Robbie Ray, right?
It wasn't like against Garrett Cole in particular. It was purely financial means.
Okay, but Steve had no weighing in about Garrett Cole from whatever that was, last Thursday. I think he opened the series, or last Friday, whenever he pitched against the Red Sox. So Steve was excited about Garrett Cole melting. Reds are a long dog. Any other dogs that you're in on? I know you mentioned the Angels is one of them.
Yeah. Well, the Reds are my favorite one. 255 is actually a little bit lower than it was. They were in the 270s a couple hours ago.
No Judge.
No Judge is big. And I actually think Garrett Cole might be even a little underrated. There's a lot of like anti-Garrett Cole bias out there, but the Reds are also a pretty underrated team. Like if you look at their lineup tonight, there's a lot of guys who have been in and out of the lineup all year that are playing. Like I think this is the best version of the Reds lineup that we've had the whole season. So Joey Votto has missed a handful of games recently. He's playing. We have Tyler Naquin also was out. Tyler Stevenson was out. Pham is in. Drury has been really good this year. India has been in and out of the lineup. All these guys are playing. So I actually think the Reds offense is a little above average the way it's currently constructed. And then Judge is not in, so the Yankees offense takes a big hit. I think Graham Ashcraft is probably not great, but given the odds, like I think the Reds have, I don't know, closer to a 40% chance to win this game, maybe a little less than that. And plus 255 for something like that. Like it should be 155. I think that would be more reasonable than 255. Like I just think this is way off. So I love Garrett Cole as a pitcher. I think he might actually be the best pitcher in the American League, although Shane McClanahan has outperformed him dramatically this year. So has Justin Verlander. So in terms of Cy Young, like he's not really in the top tier, but I think Cole is great. It's just that the circumstances for this game favor the Reds. I also just tend to love the Reds. Like I was on them every single day of their sweep against the Rays they just had. I've also had plenty of losses with the Reds, but I think that the current version of the Reds is a lot better than what we've seen most of the year. Their offense is just a good amount better than what it's been on average. So yeah, like they probably will lose, but I think that the odds here are just way too long to pass up.
Yeah, it's just important to remember, like, you know, baseball, especially more than any other sport, is just so divided into segments and like
high variance. Yep.
High variance. But even the Reds now are not the same team they were in April. They are a 500 baseball team. Like their record, if you put the cutoff point to when Joey Votto remembered he could hit and came off the IL, they've been a pretty solid team. Now they're playing a softer NL East or NL Central schedule, et cetera, but they're really not that bad. I think Graham Ashcraft is one of those guys where when you watch him pitch, he actually reminds me a lot of Clay Holmes. Not to say that he might not be able to stick in a rotation, but this is someone who throws like a 99 mile per hour sinker. He's got really good stuff. And I think on any given day, Ashcraft can have a very nice pitching performance. And then, you know, as Matt was alluding to, you've got Joey Votto back in this lineup. You've got a healthy Jonathan India, et cetera, et cetera. And then if there's one really big point that Garrett Cole kind of creates and brings upon himself when it comes to variance and it comes to having an underdog this big on this slate, is when Garrett Cole screws up, he screws up in one particular way, and that is home runs. He's been giving up 2.6 home runs per 9 across his last 6 starts. You know, we saw it in that game against the Red Sox. They didn't win the game, but when you're making those mistakes and there's no one on base, all right, the Yankees are going to win this game in a big way. But if he's making those mistakes and they are multiple run home runs, it only takes 1 or 2, and the Reds are right in this thing. So I kind of agree. I can't believe we were both going to center in on the Reds here, but I've been looking at Reds money line all day, kind of thinking it was pretty high.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like it's safer to just go with the run line at plus 135 or go with like the over on Reds 2.5 runs. But like you were saying, Garrett Cole is kind of high variance. He's a high strikeout, high fly ball guy, and capitalizing on that variance. I mean, the best way to do it is just play the long odds on the money line. Like, I just think that that's the bet that makes the most sense here.
Which I'm glad you brought that up because it actually hurts Cole. There's potential that it hurts Cole more than it does Graham Ashcraft, which say that name 5 times fast. Here we go. I've reached out to the source himself. Papa Shango.
Papa Shango. There we go.
That's
Papa
what you say when Cole's pitching. Well, I guess we're on team Papa Shango now with this Reds bet.
Gotta tweet out some gifs. I'll be right back.
Meiselman, go to just search Steve's Twitter and then search Papa Shango next to it. You'll find plenty. Right around this time last year, Gary, and correct me if I'm wrong.
A little bit later in the season.
Was it later in the season?
We had probably only just bet just bet Ray like a couple weeks before this. This was very much down the stretch of the season.
There you go. The curse of Papa Shango was how Robbie Ray ascended. Okay, Chris Sale makes his season debut. What do we think? He might only go like 4 innings tonight, right? 85, I think, is the pitch count.
That's the thing. So Sale pitching less is probably better for the Red Sox because like around the third time through the order, that's where all pitchers or most pitchers start to struggle. In terms of the Red Sox winning chances, like that's probably what you want to see is 4 good innings 2 times through the order and he's out of there. But if he does pitch 5 or 6, I think his strikeout prop is way too low. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of uncertainty here. Maybe you guys have a better read on just like how long they intend to leave him out there.
85. I think Cora said 85 pitches.
Yeah, I think they're going to be pretty tight with that 85. Now, again, this is someone who minor league numbers, obviously taken with a grain of salt, 19 strikeouts in his 11 1/3 minor league innings during this rehab assignment. So I might be with you on this strikeout prop. It is pretty low for Chris Sale, and 85 pitches. I mean, nowadays, what are we really talking about? That's probably like 10 pitches lower than most your average MLB pitcher. Chris Sale last season really wasn't even going over that 100 pitch plateau because they've really been kind of having to treat him with kid gloves the last couple of seasons. So this is still kind of 90% of his workload if we really want to break it down. So actually, yeah, I think over 5.5 strikeouts, especially with Wander Franco not in this lineup, not just because he's their best hitter of left-handed pitching, but he's one of the best contact hitters in all of baseball. Their team strikeout rate really goes up when Franco's not in that lineup.
This is a very unusual version of the Rays lineup too. This
is gonna say is their lineup out
first game. Yeah, their lineup's out.
Going to hit
Bethencourt's first game with the Rays. He was, I guess, cast off by Oakland, who's arguably the worst team in baseball. And now he's batting 3rd for Tampa, which is just like a strange phenomenon that's happening. But Yu Chang is also a new acquisition. Taylor Walls isn't a guy who was playing much before. There are a lot of injuries here. Like looking at season K rates, like you said, with Wander Franco not in the lineup, that's not going to give you much here. I think that this is a Rays lineup that should strike out a lot more than what they were doing previously when they were healthy. Like this team is really banged up. They have some good right-handed power, but like Randy Arozarena still strikes out a lot, even though he can hit for power. So yeah, if we knew for a fact that Sale was throwing exactly 85 pitches, I think over on 5.5 is a pretty solid bet.
So Steve asked me why I brought it to bring up Papa Shango, just to kind of tie this in a bow. And I said, I mentioned it on the slate, and he said, please do not summon Papa Shango without permission.
That's fair. I mean, look, it's kind of like a Candyman situation. You don't want to deal with stuff you don't truly understand, Clash.
I think I understand. But I understand why Meiselman doesn't understand.
I wasn't in on this last year. I know about it, but I wasn't in on it. I wish I was. I'm definitely jealous that I think I got Robbie Ray at like 8-1, not 80-1.
I neither was I.
I mean, late to the party.
Well, as I like to say, I got to pay my rent with my Robbie Ray winnings. Some people I know got to buy a car. So, we're all on a different path in life.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Whoa. Someone bought a car.
I'm not saying Steve did buy a car. I'm saying Steve could have bought a car.
I knew this. So he clearly went back and listened. Shango. Sorry, my fault. Not Shango. Shungo. Papa Shango.
Is Steve watching the show now, or are you guys just?
He definitely went back because he's got the little tool next to his name. He can control people in the chat from our Madden days. Yeah. Which that's over. Last time I checked, so that should be gone now. So that should deserve permission if he should still have a wrench next to his name. Then again, it fits. Guardian shortstop Ahmed Rosario not in the lineup tonight against the White Sox. That's game 2 of the doubleheader. That makes some sense, I suppose. Where else are we looking on the board tonight, Meiselman? Any totals? So okay, you like the Padres as a potential stack that totals at 11. That hit last night. It hit exactly 11, 6-5 your final score.
Yeah, that was, I think all the runs were scored after the 7th inning, or most of the runs anyway. I mean, I like the Padres to do well, but 1, the total is very high, and 2, like for DFS, everyone's on it. So I don't really have a lot to say about the Padres. I do have I have another favorite money line bet on a team we haven't talked about at all yet, and that's the Phillies going against Jose Barrios, and Garion is going to have some things to say about his Blue Jays, I'm sure, and maybe more insight on.
I'd say that much.
So hold on real quick. From a news standpoint, Barrios was announced as the starter around like late this morning, right? That was the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was always tentative that Gausman was going to start. He was never announced as the starter. It was just, hey, we hope he can start on Tuesday.
Gotcha.
But this is Barrios on normal rest with yesterday's off day, so it's not really that crazy. But obviously a downgrade from a healthy Kevin Gausman.
I do feel like this line was priced like it opened with some expectation that it could be Gausman, and it just hasn't moved sufficiently. The Phillies are going with, I think, a true bullpen game, so that adds a lot of uncertainty. They also don't have Alec Boehm or JT Realmuto, I guess, because of vaccine issues. They're on
because he, and I quote, won't let Canada tell him what to do with his body. One of my favorite quotes of the year so far.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to ignore that. And that has nothing to do with why I like the Phillies. I just think, I mean, I kind of always like the Phillies. Kyle Schwarber was underperforming until about the start of June. Now he is clearly not underperforming. I think this is just a really good offense, even without Bryce Harper, even without Realmuto. And the Jays, as I'm sure you can attest to, have a few really good hitters and then a bunch of not so good hitters. And it does help them that Danny Jansen is back, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. And ultimately, I think the Phillies are just much better offensively. And I'd almost rather have a bullpen game than Jose Barrios. The Phillies bullpen
I would disagree in the sense the Jays have, I think, honestly, every single hitter in the Jays lineup might have a WRC plus above 100 this season.
I think the Phillies have underachieved.
Sure, I would just say if you're gonna pick against the Jays, which I fully respect your right to do, I would say it's more about Jose Barrios and an absolutely terrible bullpen. I think, which again is probably why, not to say I wouldn't bet on the Phillies money line. I mean, we're talking about a Jays team that's lost 9 of their last 10 games. But I think the over is where I'm probably gravitating tonight, just because, I think the Jays have the best possible version of their lineup going tonight with Danny Jansen back in there in the 9 spot. So I think their run potential is relatively high against the Phillies bullpen that actually, I know we have it's been really easy the last like half decade to just assume the Phillies have a terrible bullpen. It's been much better the past 6 weeks. So that could be advantageous for the Phillies, obviously, but generally speaking, I think the Jays are probably in a good place to score 4 to 5 runs tonight. Yeah. And then you get to Jose Barrios side of things and the Jays bullpen side of things, where coming into this game, there was only one pitcher in baseball who's given up more opponent barrels than Jose Barrios. I mean, he is home runs waiting to happen, particularly from the left side of the plate, which is a problem when Kyle Schwarber's in town. So I think the over to me is probably the more tempting bet in this game, or maybe the safer bet in this game. But obviously Phillies plus 160, 165 even, against a team that is kind of spiraling right now in Toronto is a pretty good bet.
Okay. Very good. We've got, about 10 minutes or so. Any updates from a future standpoint that either of you might have a thought
on? The team that, we were just talking about him, but the Phillies were
unless you have anything else for tonight before we move on.
I mean, there are a couple games where I think there's some reason to look to the Pirates plus 130. We didn't really talk about the Diamondbacks. I think those are teams that are marginally underpriced, but nothing too exciting elsewhere. I think we've kind of covered, at least from my perspective, most of what's interesting with Phillies, Reds, Angels. I think those were really the games I was most looking to talk about. The Phillies were almost in a position where I was going to start talking about them as the buy low future bet, but then they just lost 2 games in a row to the Cardinals. So they had a 4-game series. They won the first 2. And the Cardinals are a team they likely will need to pass in the wild card to make the playoffs. And then they lost the 3rd and 4th games of that series, which I think it's a decent blow to their playoff chances. If we knew the Phillies were in the playoffs, I think they're live to win the World Series. The problem is that they're in a really tough division with the Mets and Braves ahead, and they're going to have to get in through a wild card spot, but the Padres are there. The Cardinals are right there. The Giants are kind of wavering, but it would have been a huge boost to them if they were able to take 3 of 4, at least, from the Cardinals. So I think keeping an eye on the Phillies is worthwhile going forward. Maybe wait till Bryce Harper comes back. But I was almost getting really excited about it if they would have done better in that series. And honestly, there isn't much else in terms of World Series or pennant odds that I really like. I think the Blue Jays and Braves, we talked about them last week with LaMarca, they're somewhat interesting, but I don't think anything really jumps off the page right now.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you look at some of these teams, I think the Jays in particular have been overpriced all season. So even in this down point, they're still not really giving you enough value, I think, to really buy into what's going on with them right now. Obviously, this is kind of an interesting time to make these future bets because you almost want to attach yourself to franchises you think will definitely be active at the trade deadline.
So the Orioles.
Sure. Yes.
The
Winners of
Orioles are
eight
still
straight.
not
Problem
making.
is they might be active in the wrong direction.
They're still not making the playoffs. There's still almost no chance they're getting in. Like I wouldn't.
That's a
take
1.3% on Fangraphs.
Right. If the Orioles were 50-1 to get into the playoffs right now, I would still not bet on them. And I'm a big fan of their, like, I've had their money lines for
Let's
some
just
of this
look,
run.
shall we? Oh, it's not.
There's so many good teams in the American League. Like,
Yeah.
they're not passing Toronto.
They basically came out and said, like, we are still probably going to trade Trey Mancini. Like they know who they are. I'll give them
Yeah.
credit for that. But no, I think when the
Sorry,
one thing
go
I would
ahead.
say
I'm
about
horsing
teams-
around.
Sorry, Lash, what was that?
Go ahead. I'm horsing around giving you Orioles, 400-1
Fair.
series picks.
But I would just say in that tier with the Braves, with the Blue Jays, with the Brewers, with the Padres, even the Red Sox, I would say pretty confidently that like the Blue Jays and the Padres in particular will be making moves at the deadline. They've just been two of the more active front offices we've seen the last couple of years. They've shown that they are willing. Not only are they willing to move future assets, but these are two teams that, despite many trades, still have two of the better farm systems in all of baseball. So there are things to move. This is kind of like when we were all staring at Golden State going, they can make a trade. They didn't actually end up making the trade, but they just had so many assets that we kind of thought they would at some point. I guess the Twins are kind of interesting at 45-1. The problem is you just have no faith in the Twins once they reach the playoffs. I mean, I think you start weighing starting pitching a lot more in a situation like that. And while I think their lineup is sort of like underappreciated for how deep it actually is, aside from Sonny Gray, I just don't think there's a lot there. And this is a team that I believe has lost 18 consecutive playoff games. So not that I really care what the 1999 Twins are doing and how that impacts the 2022 Twins. There's kind of just like this bad aura hanging over the franchise. They'll probably have to play the Yankees if they get out of the first round, and we all know how that will go. But still 45-1 for a team that right now is 6 games up on who I would say is their most difficult competition within their division. We're past the midway point of the season right now. That's not nothing.
Yeah. How about any Robbie Ray like picks in the Cy Young category?
It just
I
feels
feel
like there's.
Are there any long shots that really look appealing to you? Like I think we've talked about Dylan Cease a couple times recently. His odds aren't that long anymore. Like he was really the only guy that I thought could be like this year's Robbie Ray.
And by the way, American League's not up because there was a game today.
Oh yeah, Shane Bieber
game
pitched
now
already today.
Hey Glash, could you pull up National League Rookie of the Year though? I'm curious to see
Sure.
if there's been any movement on Strider. So there has. Okay, so we looked at this Friday and he was plus 300. And I thought
Yeah,
it was a good
Mackenzie
bet.
Gore had another horrible start, and
Yeah.
he's basically just out of it now. So I guess
This is
everyone
huge for
else
tonight.
improved a little
It might
bit.
be your last chance to nibble on Strider because he pitches tonight. If he pitches well,
Well, I just don't think there's another guy who's clearly going to win this. I mean, Cruz is great and he's toolsy and there's a lot going on, but the Pirates are going to lose 100 games and he's got so much swing and miss in his game. I think there's a good chance O'Neal Cruz hits below 200 when this is all said and done. Like he might have 15 home runs. He might have 15 stolen bases.
Yeah.
But I just don't think he's someone who's lined up to win Rookie of the Year. And then, for as great as Michael Harris has been, this is not something we often talk about when it comes to Rookie of the Year in baseball, but people are going to look at this and go, okay, who had more of an impact on the Braves winning this division or making the playoffs? Was it Spencer Strider, who's been arguably like the best pitcher in the National League the last 2 months, or Michael Harris, this guy who's kind of a platoon ninth outfielder, is having a nice season, but isn't having an amazing season. I just think that Strider is going to get the votes for the Braves and their success. I don't think Harris is necessarily going to benefit the same way that Strider would. So maybe it's not even worth betting right now at basically just 2-1, but I do think just keep an eye on it. Maybe if he has a bad start tonight, like not even a bad start, let's say he gives up like 4 earned runs across 6 innings, like an average start.
Yeah.
Maybe check back in and see if his odds are like plus 250, plus 275.
Yeah, it's a thing that we do now, that DraftKings does now, where the odds come down at the start of games. And this was like one of the angles we talked about a lot during the NBA season was like, while the game's happening, check on the futures odds. Like if Strider's got another 9 Ks through 3 innings tonight and you can just bet him for Rookie of the Year then, like that you actually can get a lot of value that way. That's no longer an option because the odds just go down. They're off the board as soon as games begin.
They
So
listen
that's
to this
kind of
show. They
unfortunate.
listen to this show, Meiselman.
Yeah.
That's what happened. They start listening to you.
Yeah, I went back and looked at it. There was
Content specialist.
there was a Celtics Sixers game on national TV. You remember when Boston won by like
50.
50 in
Oh, yeah.
Philly without some, like I forget who was missing, but yeah, that was like, we were looking at division betting as a result of that game. That ended up being kind of pivotal, actually. I think they won by 1 game. I would have said
they won, dude. They won on a tiebreaker, but I know what you're talking about because if Philly had won, Philly probably wins the season series, and at that point, the Celtics were still like plus 300 to win the Atlantic Division.
Yep. It's so funny to me that the only place that the division standings matter anymore in basketball is gambling markets. Like they literally have no impact beyond like the 7th tiebreaker, aside from just
so true.
Hey, yeah, let's bet some. I completely forgot who won the Atlantic Division this season.
Yeah, it doesn't actually matter that much, and the Celtics got a worse first round matchup because they won anyway. But yeah, I guess the connection here is like I actually really like the Braves to win the NL East if they win the next game or two, but you can't do that anymore. So we're kind of just stuck. I do think the Braves should win tonight. They have a massive advantage on the mound, and Starling Marte is out of the lineup for the Mets, which is why the Braves are like minus 200 to win this game. So taking a shot on Braves plus 150 to win the NL East right now, I think is reasonable. I think betting on Strider right now, even though it's down in plus 210, like I think Gary, like you're right. He is the favorite. He's the rightful favorite. And I think that might still be too long, honestly.
Because I also think there isn't really that guy laying in the weeds. Like I think even when you look at AL Rookie of the Year, and I think justifiably Julio Rodriguez is like a minus 300 favorite at this point. You know, there's still like a Bobby Witt Jr. sitting there with the potential to go supernova the last 3 months of the season.
And
I'm not saying
Jeremy Pena's had a great year too. He was actually the favorite until he got injured. He was
Jeremy Pena might finish top 5 in the American League in F-WAR, not among rookies, among everybody. Like he's going to have a really, really good season.
They're not missing Carlos Correa at all. I think Pena might be better this year.
But there isn't that guy in the National League. I'm not staring at the crop of players beyond Strider going, oh man, I'm really afraid of Seiya Suzuki. I'm just not. Like there isn't really that guy that I fear. So maybe get on it as long as plus money, honestly, at this point.
Yeah. If he has a really good game tonight and you check tomorrow and he's still plus 200 or so, then I would say definitely go after it. But you worry that he has one really bad game and then it kind of ruins it. And Michael Harris maybe takes the lead, something like that.
Real quick, because you guys are both basketball people, Adrian Wojnarowski just put out a tweet that it looks like Donovan Mitchell is going to be shopped around in possible trade scenarios.
They're only going to start now? Incredible.
They should have kept Gobert and just traded Mitchell. Like, I'm sorry. Like, what are we doing? Rudy Gobert is the best defensive player in the NBA, and they're going to trade both of them? Because didn't they just trade Gobert because of Mitchell? Isn't that the reason or no?
Something like that, rumor-wise, or the hot take artists would maybe agree with you. I think
there was definitely that writing on the wall. I guess if you're an ownership group, a new ownership group in particular, you probably have an easier time selling and marketing Donovan Mitchell than you do Rudy Gobert, but I'm with you. Gobert's the better player. I have no idea what the market might look like for a guy like that. Honestly,
could he be involved in a Kevin Durant trade? Is that possible?
Okay, I was gonna bring that up because Danny Ainge loves Kevin Durant. He's loved him since they went to the Hamptons with Kelly Olynyk and tried to recruit him to Boston. Here's my first thought on this, real quick. Meiselman, you tell me if it's not worth it because the number's not there. The Miami Heat are always in on these kinds. Like Miami, 11-1 to win the title right now. Like Miami is always in on these fit. No, it's too.
I don't like it. You need to be able to get it. If they get Durant, yes.
What about Mitchell?
That's not enough.
Okay.
Like the Heat will be a contender if they get Mitchell, but I still like
Mitchell, Butler, Adebayo. That's your team.
Because the problem is if the Heat don't get Durant may not leave, and then the Nets are better than the Heat.
I was gonna say, is there any? Can you make the case to bet Brooklyn
yes,
right
I'm
now?
going to answer your question. Yes.
Okay. Cause I kind of want to, I don't think he's getting traded. It might happen in season, who knows, but I don't think it's happening this offseason. I think most of the market has dried up.
So Glash, if you can't tell what we're talking about, the Nets are the value.
Yeah. No,
although really like my favorite team on the board is the Celtics. They're the best team by a mile right now.
Is this January or is this July 12th?
There should be an extra 0 next to the Celtics number. I don't really recognize it with only 3 digits. But yeah, I think the Celtics. No, but the Nets are the long shot. That's more interesting, I think. Because like if they don't make any deals, they're among the best teams. Like they have the same.
I know.
They're better than last year if Ben Simmons and Durant and Kyrie are all playing.
I'm just
Well,
trying to.
literally, this roster prior to Durant requesting a trade was plus 800 to win the title. They literally have not
Tripled.
made a roster move
It's tripled.
since
More than
that point.
They lost Bruce Brown, and that's it.
They lost Bruce Brown, that's true, but they brought
That's,
in
yeah.
Royce O'Neal. So like kind of whatever,
same,
comparable players. But like a team that was plus 800 has not lost any of their players, and they are now 70-1. Yes, one of those players publicly wants out, but who knows? He's technically under contract. So is Kyrie. Like they're nets right now. Yeah, look, I've spent, I don't know, $25 worst ways. If you want to drop a unit on that, fine by me.
And say what you want about Russell Westbrook. Say that is the swap for Kyrie Irving. Teams now. I know teams when they get Westbrook, tend to not play as well.
No. You
What
can't.
are we trying to sell
if
here?
They
I don't
make
want
that
any
deal.
part
It's
of this.
over. That the bet is off if they do that trade.
Oh, okay.
Westbrook is
Well, I
terrible.
was just
You
gonna say
can't.
when teams lose Irving, they get better too. Just to throw that out there.
Oh boy. Who has Rudy Gay right now? / who had Rudy Gay? That's another.
I don't
great
understand.
barometer.
Okay, this is. I know we're wrapping, but like, why didn't Rudy Gay play in the playoffs last year? Like,
I don't know.
he was on a team that could have used him, and
He's on the
instead
Jazz,
they were playing Bo Cruz instead of him.
Okay, we have to go. So that's the latest in the NBA. Apparently now that the Jazz are shopping, not only did they get rid of Rudy Gobert, but now they are back in on listening to trade scenarios on Donovan Mitchell. That from ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski. Good luck tonight with your baseball bets, everybody, and your lineups in the DFS world. For Gary and Thor, Matt Meiselman, Brendan Glasheen, the golf guys are here tomorrow on the slate, and be sure to catch the sweat at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you.